Good morning, Broncos country. Welcome into the show with Sean and Sandy. No Sean, no Sandy just yet. It's Cody Roark here, Broncos reporter from Mile High Sports here at Broncos Park, powered by Common Spirit. It is the second to last day of training camp out here in Dove Valley. Look, a lot to talk about here today. The pads are back on here for the Broncos as they are gearing up for joint practices with the Green Bay Packers tomorrow. Now, really setting the table here. Yesterday's practice for the Broncos, it was in shells. It was more of an attention to detail, teaching emphasis for Sean Payton. They did one move the ball period at the end of practice where it was focusing on, hey, you're down 3 points at the end of a game. You need to at least kick a field goal to tie it. Both quarterbacks, Bo Nix getting the first team reps, marching the team downfield to kick a field goal there to tie it up. Jarrett Stidham also did the same exact thing there. But really today, a little bit more physicality in terms of contact with the pads, because tomorrow's practice, the Green Bay Packers come to town, and there's going to be a lot of physicality. Both fields here will be in use, and we'll obviously have you covered there daily with written recaps at milehighsports.com. But today's practice primer is some good news here for the Broncos. Brandon Jones dressed out here today in pads. He's been making his way back from a hamstring injury that has been bothering him. That is a good sign. As the Broncos safety depth, they need it. And speaking of safety depth, we'll get to it here in a minute. Justin Simmons potentially landing somewhere in the NFC South where they will play the Broncos this season. We'll get to that here in a moment. Cornerback Levi Wallace, who's had the hamstring injury, he is not yet back at practice. He's still working on the side field. And right now, it really seems like that cornerback 2 battle has really diminished itself really between Damari Mathis and obviously Riley Moss. So I'd say keep your eye on that as something as we get a little bit deeper here as training camp goes. Lucas Kroll had the toe injury. He's back at practice here today, and he's dressed out. So that's a good sign for him after he was carted off. But, I think another thing we should look at here, and obviously practice is getting ready to get started, so I'm going to have to jump out a little bit early here, folks. Just the overall tempo and tone. The Broncos have managed to stay relatively healthy on the injury side of things. Green Bay is obviously going to be a little bit of a test. You're not going to see Green Bay starters this week in the preseason game, but you are going to see them on Friday if you happen to make it out here for practice. So look for that. Bo Nix will more than likely get a majority of the first-team reps this week as he has been named the starter for this game. And I found it interesting, too, watching if you had the chance to check out the Kay Adams Up and Adams show on YouTube. She was here yesterday. And obviously, thank you to Kay. She gave us a lot of voodoo donuts inside the media workroom. The one thing she mentioned, because Sean Payton, she sat down with him after he met with us, and there was just a different vibe. Sean's more relaxed, I think, when he's with Kay. He couldn't help but contain his excitement about Bo Nix. And she even called him on and said, the jig is up. You're kind of giddy about it. And he said, I don't have a very good poker face. All signs pointing to Bo Nix being named the starter after next week. Though he did say, hey, the band's still playing. They got one more song, which means that this week in the preseason, all signs point to Bo Nix being the starter here. So a little bit more physicality here at today's practice as we anticipate here. A lot to get going on, and obviously I'll have you updated after practice here, milehighsports.com. Also check out on YouTube if you haven't done so already. I did a film review from the Colts game looking at the Broncos defense. Chris Abrams-Drain, Jonah Ellis standing out in their appearances on film. We get breakdowns there, and one thing you can expect, we'll do a film breakdown on Bo Nix every week on Tuesdays. If the NFL releases the All-22, we'll do a film breakdown on the defense of some of the plays or key players that made some standout plays on Thursdays. You can get all that film breakdown at Mile High Sports on the YouTube page. So subscribe or follow so you never miss out on that. Practice is starting to ramp up a little bit. I'm going to have to get going here, but Sean's going to take over. Sean is here, and he's going to break down a lot of stuff. Also, you have some guests on today's show, obviously for Sean and Sandy. No Sandy here today, but Sean Drotar holding it down as always. And also, I'll be back here on the show tomorrow morning as we preview joint practices with the Green Bay Packers. Hopefully no skirmishes, and hopefully guys can get some competitive looks in the move the ball periods. We'll have you updated here. Mile High Sports, Cody Roark.
Thanks to Cody Roark for his primer and update. Of course, the Broncos getting underway today. They will have an opportunity to have a joint practice tomorrow with the Green Bay Packers. And, of course, the Packers.
I need everybody to understand that joint practice doesn't mean what you think it does. Okay?
Is that a Colorado joke or what used to be a Colorado joke?
Green Bay. Come on, Sean.
And Nate Lundy, of course, here.
Stuff writes itself.
It
writes itself, Sean.
But
you telling me Jordan Love doesn't want to come out here and get high? Of course he does.
Mile high. At mile high.
He would love to come out here and just get stoned to the bejesus. I'm convinced of it.
Well, he's not going to get a chance on the game day.
Dang
Sunday
it!
Because he's not going to be starting on Sunday.
He would be so. The entire
be.
team would be more fun to interview. Can you imagine?
Yeah, eventually that would have become the case. Oh my goodness. Yeah, but I don't
like
practices would be
man, this place
a
is
lot worse.
Cool.
A lot worse, however. So for the Broncos today, Nate, the last chance they have to at least I shouldn't say last chance. The last time
is Bo.
They have to hit each other. Now they get a chance to go in the rest of the training camp and take on another team tomorrow. But today, a pretty spirited practice for the Broncos, obviously in pads and
yeah, because Sean Payton gathered them all around not long after I got here, and it was a full team huddle.
Yep,
full team.
Had everybody
in it, and he's in the middle holding court. And obviously important things were said because it lasted a little while. It was we got something going on here. There was something he wanted to address.
But you weren't hearing a bunch of a lot of shouting in there, though.
No.
So it wasn't an angry meeting. It was,
but it was definitely there was a message he was trying to get.
Everybody needed to be him.
And this wasn't him having a conversation with the offense or him having a conversation with the defensive line or whatever. This was something that everybody needed to hear, and I like the tone. I like the tone. I mean, I give I give some credit to a couple of our buddies that know a thing or two. Brandon Stokely, Ryan Harris, and Alfred Williams, who all three last year, even when Russell was still here, said, "Isn't it nice to see a practice that looks like a practice?"
Right. Well, I mean, that's I think the one thing to take away from this training camp thus far is the idea that these practices look professional, they look efficient, they look like you expect practices to look. And I think that has a little bit to do, obviously, with Payton being in the second season, but obviously Payton has about 2/3 of the guys in camp are players that he has brought in. So guys that he knows, or at least feels confident, can play in his system, can play the way he wants to play, as the personality type that he wants. And that's something that he obviously didn't have last year, starting especially with Russell Wilson. And that's not throwing dirt on Russell Wilson so much as it is just an admission that these two guys were just never going to be on the same page. The way they looked at football was different. The way they looked at the outside of the sidelines world of football was vastly different. And so they just weren't going to blend. In Nick's, Payton has his guy. He feels comfortable about it. You can almost see the smile on his face every time he talks about him. And that, of course, once you feel you have your quarterback, something that Payton didn't have last year, all of a sudden your comfort level goes up dramatically for the rest of your team, even if Sean Payton knows, and he does, that this is not likely to be anywhere near a Super Bowl team or even a playoff team, that they are rebuilding. But you feel lighter, you feel more comfortable, you can get message across when at least you know who's going to be behind center. Yeah,
I think you have that message. But to your point, I mean, we're up to, is it 60? How many is it again that are like his guys now?
Yeah, it's 60 or 61 at last count because they did make a.
And I know that includes all the practice.
But it's 2/3. Yeah.
Okay, so you also probably feel a little bit more confident in sending out your messaging and in trying to make a particular point because you're making a point to a guy that you expect is going to be around, not that you're going to be gone, right? And I think that is where a lot of what he's been able to do with the roster and what we're seeing with how he's coaching and how he's messaging to these guys. And it seems to be getting through. Would you agree? I mean, we're not in the room, but I certainly feel like I'm watching body language from guys. Like, I'll give you an example. Just a minute ago, they're running some offensive stuff right in front of us right now. But just a minute ago, he walked over and was talking to, I mean, there were a couple of receivers there, but you could tell he was Cortland was one of them. Cortland Sutton was one of them, standing right in the middle. And yes, I know that I'm reading a lot into this, right?
Yeah, well, that's what there
was like a head nod going on,
right?
And it looked to me even like at one point Cortland said something back to him, and he and Sean Payton turned around and again was like, so there's, I don't know, there's a message that's starting to be heard. And that's all you can ask for, right?
Sutton seems to be more engaged too. There have been multiple times I've come in and I've been on the sideline before getting into the tent here for the show, and hearing Sutton round up the other wide receivers, and generally positive, but pretty loud, and with a couple things that we can't put on the air here, but firing the guys up, letting them know that we have jobs, and we're responsible, the kind of stuff that you would expect when you mic a guy up.
Yeah.
But I think you see Sutton more engaged. I think when you look at a player like Bo Nix, he is a rookie, but I think Sean Payton sees him as a guy that eventually, and maybe even sooner than that, can forward that message so Sean Payton doesn't always have to give that message.
Correct.
That now, hey, the number 10 is the starting quarterback. If he says it, it's like I said it. And I think that Payton, with Nix being an older rookie at 24, is more comfortable with that idea as well. Because you're not dealing with a guy that's 21 coming out of college. You're dealing with a guy who's married, who just bought a home, who's already 24
really
years
nice
old.
House
really
too.
Nice house down in Castle Pines.
Have you seen it?
It looks really, really
It's
pleasant.
really nice.
So congratulations to the Nixes. Nice choice.
I'm still trying to work on an invite to the backyard barbecue.
Right.
I know a barbecue place that'll cater it.
Yeah, you do actually. And one of those. The backyard barbecue might be the BMW Championship, by the way, next week. That might be it for the.
Can I tell you right now how happy I am that camp is ending tomorrow? Because you're going to find my pasty white butt at Castle Pines next week. That's where I'm going to be hiding.
Yeah,
I'm going to be down there watching some of the world's best.
That is going to be
at a course that I just love.
A treat for sure to see the PGA back in Colorado.
The Castle Pines. Oh, I love Castle Pines. It's just gorgeous. Good for Bo Nix, by the way, for getting a house down there.
Yeah,
just
nice place to start.
Just get yourself grounded, right? He didn't go buy Russell and Sierra's place.
Right.
That was smart. Don't do that. Start fresh. Get your own spot right there on the golf course.
According to Denver Post, it came with a small golf cart garage.
Wait a minute. We need to share a story really quick before we get to break.
Okay.
The gentleman, the ginger standing in front of us is none other than Jason Garrett. I need to share this story that Danny shared with us. So, those of you that are that follow us a lot on Mile High Sports, you are aware of something when it comes to MHS, and that is we have not one but two resident Dallas Cowboys fans on the team at Mile High Sports. One of them you hear every morning on 98.1, 107.5 HD3, and streaming at milehighsports.com, and that's David Hurlbutt.
Okay.
David is a Cowboys fan.
Where's David from?
New York.
Okay.
So I know, don't ask.
Well, I know Anila's from Colorado,
but he's a Cowboys fan. And so David talks about that a lot. And so, right. So there's a lot of there, but sharing in that misery is none other than AP, than Anilo Piro,
who is also a Mets fan.
Which is again weird.
Did you just grab team names out of a hat and say these are my favorite teams now?
Like
How does that work?
He's like the people that I make fun of when I see their stickers in the back of their car on I-25, where it's like they've got like a Red Sox sticker, a Raiders sticker,
and then
like,
a Cowboys,
an Avs sticker, and it's like, oh, just come on and knock it off, because now you're just pissing me off.
Ohio State.
Anyway,
that kind of stuff.
Totally a Buckeye thing.
Right.
Anyway, and the other one is Nilo Piro. So Danny, producer to the stars, sends a text to Anilo Piro this morning and says, "Hey, Jason Garrett's out here." Now, for those that are not aware, Anilo is normally out here with us at camp. Anilo has been deathly sick for about a week and a half. He has been sick as a dog for about a week and a half. Like, his ass got kicked. You know how every now and then that happens to us? You just get that one bug that just for whatever reason, your body does not shake. That's what's been happening to Anilo for a week and a half. I think it's a cop-out. I just think he just didn't want to be out here and hot. So Danny sends him this note that says, "Hey, Jason Garrett's out here." And Anilo, being the diehard Cowboys fan that he is, goes, "Well, it's a good damn thing I'm not out there." And I was like, that is spoken like such a true Cowboys fan. So I just wanted to share that and to throw that out there for everybody. Before we keep rolling, because you've got some great guests for today, I want to remind everybody, I was just joking about having a backyard party at Bo Nix's house down there in Castle Pines. And I said that I know exactly who's going to cater it, and that's our friends at Rolling Smoke Barbecue. 4 locations around the Denver Metro, all going to take such good care of you. That is what these guys are going to do. You can find them in the Stanley Marketplace in Aurora, in Centennial, at the corner of Dry Creek and University, at the Golden Mill up there against the Front Range in Golden, and the newest location in Wheat Ridge. You can also find them at Red Rocks if you're headed out to a show over the course of the next few weeks here as the season starts to wind down just slightly. That is where you can find them if you want to be able to grab yourself something so tasty to be able to eat. Hardwood smoked on the meats. That includes the brisket, the turkey, the pulled pork, the hot links, which I just love. Their hot links are so good. You can do that. You can grab yourself some ribs. And they also do some specials from every so often. Sometimes you'll be like, hey, they got rib tips going. They got just whatever it is. They've always got something for you, and the sides are made fresh every single day. Please go see our friends at Rolling Smoke Barbecue. And when you do, tell them that Nate and Sean and Mile High Sports sent you. Trust me, if you visit them once, you will be back again and again and again. True story. I've got some friends whose kids absolutely love Rolling Smoke, and they're mad at you and I for introducing them to it because now it's what the kids ask for nonstop. I'm not making this up, folks. Once you go once, you will be back again and again. Go see our friends at RollingSmokeBBQ.com.
Well, I mean, I hope they feel better about it, but I mean, you're welcome, obviously. Thanks to Rolling Smoke for supporting all of that. Keep in mind now as we get into these last couple days of training camp with the Broncos out here today, the Packers in tomorrow. The Packers will not play their starters, according to Matt LaFleur, on Sunday in the game Sunday night against Denver. They will be out here on the practice field tomorrow for the joint practice because there is maybe more value in joint practices for certain coaches than there are for the preseason games because you can set up exactly what you want. But now that it feels very much as the quarterback competition, if you're watching this, you can see the air quotes. If you can't, imagine me doing air quotes with my fingers because there never was a competition. But now that Bo Nix has basically taken the reins, barring a disastrous outing against backups on Sunday night, that makes things easier. It makes things easier for the Broncos as a whole, but there are, for the first time in really, quite frankly, Nate, the majority of the decade, a lot of position groups that now find themselves with a lot of guys on the bubble, and maybe it's a lot of surprising guys on the bubble, but now we're looking at one of the challenges that a lot of teams, when they have talent, run into. You have talent. They haven't necessarily produced at the NFL level yet. This is sort of a weird, dangerous time in which you have to make sure when you look at this roster that you are getting the guys that not only are your most talented players, but the ones that you know will be able to produce at this level. And so when you look at some of the Broncos units, especially a wide receiver, love the talent. Not really sure which ones are going to click. And to my mind, that's far more interesting to watch over the course of the next couple days than this weekend than it is the quarterbacks. Yeah,
I think it really is. There's some position battles I think that are important, one of which is not very sexy, but you and I talked about it yesterday, and that's the center position.
If you like winning football games, guy hands the ball to the quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, it's the center position, and I want to elaborate on that here in just a second because I had a good conversation before we sat down for the show today with Ryan Harris about that position. So I want to share some of Ryan's insights that he told me. But the offensive line positions, like yesterday on the podium, Sean Payton said, Jeff Legwald asked him about, just like in just overall, like what's your thought process here? Like, do you have an idea of when you want to be able to say who our starters are or things like that?
Yeah.
And he essentially talked about it from the standpoint of understanding that this continues to be a fluid type of motion, right? But what he said was, you want to ask me who our starting right guard is? I can tell you.
Right.
He goes, but I thought,
but
there was a really great quote that he said, and a lot of you have seen this already because I thought it was really a good way that he put it. He said, every single day, he and the coaches sit down and say, if we had to play tomorrow, who's in, who's out.
Right.
And he said, we probably feel good. He goes, maybe that number's around 44 that we feel like we could tell you right now. He goes, and then the rest of them we're still working on.
But, you think about it, that's 22 starters, 24 starters, I guess, if you want to talk about the punter and the kicker. And I guess 25 if you want to talk about the long snapper. But still, that's all your starters and most of your second team.
Correct.
So the Broncos probably have all that kind of down here. Now, the rest of this kind of gets done on the margins. Now, when some starting positions are up for grabs, and there are a couple, the center's one. We'll talk about that with Chris Thomasson of the Denver Gazette later in the show as well. He has some thoughts on that. But you look at the cornerback position, where you don't necessarily know who's going to start. We think that you're talking about Brandon Jones and PJ Locke at the safety position. That feels relatively secure. And I think on the outside, when you're looking at the edge guys, it's probably going to be Jonathan Cooper and Baron Browning. But, how much does Nick Bonito roll into that? We'll find out. He was second on the team in sacks last year, despite not getting as much play time. So some of these situations when it comes to the starters, there's not that very many left. And that's actually a really good thing. Now that everyone has finally figured out, I don't know why it took this long, but anyway, good. The Bo Nix is the quarterback. You look at it, Bo Nix is your quarterback. Javonte Williams is your starting running back. Of course, there's going to be some running back by committee in there, but you have a pretty good idea who that committee is. Michael Burton's your fullback. You know about 4 of the 5 starters on the line, like you've said, Bowles, Powers, Miners, McGlinchey. That center position is up for grabs, but even in the wide receivers, Sutton is number 1, Reynolds is number 2, probably Mims is number 3, but number 3 is situational. Tight end, it is going to be Adam Troutman. Obviously, you want to see some more guys bubble up in Kroll and Dulcich as the season goes along, but it's going to be Troutman. So on the offense, as we stand here today, right now, it's one starting job up for grabs. It's the center. On the defensive side, you're talking Franklin Myers, DJ Jones, and Allen. That's already set. The inside linebacker spot, maybe that's one of the ones that's up for grabs. Maybe obviously opposite of Alex Singleton, who is as much of a lock as there is on the roster as a starter, and really the guy that the Broncos put in front of everyone, but there's an interview to be had. But then is it going to be Cody Barton, the veteran, opposite him? Is it going to be Jonas Griffith opposite him? Doesn't matter that much because most teams play nickel as their base. Nickel is the base now. It's not the 3-4. It's not the 4-3. The base is nickel, and they know their slot guy is. That's Jaquan McMillan. So you're really talking about which out of 2 guys that are both going to make the team is the starter at middle linebacker, and who starts opposite of Pat Surtain. And that is a big one. But in the end, we're talking about 3. We're not even at the second preseason game, Nate. There are 3 starting jobs up for grabs. And that's it, realistically. And that's a good place to be when you talk about progress. Doesn't mean the Broncos are going to be a playoff team. Doesn't mean they're going to be making a lot of noise. But it does mean that they have now, you've gotten past that stage. I'll compare up in Boulder that Deion Sanders had last year, where you're literally just looking at the team and going, this team won 1 game. Forget it. We're starting from scratch, and you have to find pieces. The Broncos now in their second year with Sean Payton, they have the pieces. There are at this stage only 3 starting jobs open, and it's not going to come from somebody we haven't heard of. That's good.
Yeah, that's absolutely
good. Even if
good.
it's not sexy, it's good.
Even if it's not elite.
That's important too.
What did we acknowledge yesterday? Like, I love Cortland Sutton. I really do, guys. I like Cortland a lot. But Cortland's not an elite receiver.
No.
Not in the NFL. He's not. He's not at that level.
He's a really good number 2 on a lot of teams.
Maybe now that he might have a better quarterback, we might see that. Dependent position. We've talked about that 100 times. Maybe we will see a little bit different out of him. That's what I'm hoping.
Yeah.
Like,
I believe, hoping.
Like,
so everyone's hoping.
I believe very much in the talent that DT had, that Demaryius had. But we also know that he got to the point where he was receiving passes from one of the best quarterbacks of all time, right? So, like, eventually, Ish got better, right?
And Tim Tebow, right?
Right. So you see where I think the talent is with DT. DT was also a specimen of a human being. So Cortland's not quite there.
No.
Does it mean that the 2, 3, 4, 5 receivers matter? Of course it does. It matters on every team. I think it does matter a little bit more on this squad because I don't think you have this dynamic number 1, right? Like,
there's no Justin Jefferson.
Calvin Johnson is not on this team.
Right.
Right. And so when you talk about, there are a few backup positions, there are some spots where those are important.
Yeah.
But remember, if you get to the point where you are relying on the backups, the expectations of this team change. Period. End of story.
Right.
And that's something you have to keep in mind, whether you're going to watch from the berm tomorrow for the joint practice, or whether you are going to be there on Sunday night at Empower Field, whatever it is. Keep that in mind, please, with an understanding of what is and isn't vital when it comes to the backups.
Yeah, and this is one of the things that you and I think have hit on this whole training camp, the idea that the Broncos, again, can be far better as a team in far better position as a franchise and far better positioned to make a leap forward in a couple years and still have a record inferior to last year's. That can happen. Things don't always move in a linear fashion when it comes to wins and losses. And so the Broncos may not match those 8 wins. You and I believe that they will not match those 8 wins. But I look at this team where this stands right now, and I look at last year's team, and I think that this year's team looks notably better. It looks better. It looks sharper. It looks more focused. The players' talent syncs up with what they're trying to do. This looks like a better football team than last year's football team that won 8. But if this team doesn't win 8, I don't think that means it was wrong. There is the reality that some of these things don't work. It's not, oh, you have better talent, you will automatically win more games. Not always, because it doesn't happen in a vacuum. The other teams are that you'll be playing against are going for their own runs. The AFC is stacked. There's a lot of quarterbacking talent in the AFC, almost a historical amount on the AFC side where it's very, very shallow on the NFC side. Things are a little bit stacked against the Broncos right now with things they can't control. And this is where, Nate, I want to give them some credit on the things that they can. I think the Broncos read the NFL landscape as it stood. They correctly evaluated their team, kind of needed a rebuild. And Sean Payton, apparently based on what he's done in this offseason, decided, I can do that. I'm comfortable with that if I can get my guy at quarterback. But the Broncos read the AFC room and realized it's going to be really tough for anybody to sneak into the playoffs right now at all, let alone when you're trying to work your way back up. So they take the big dead cap hit from Russell Wilson. They take the dead cap hit from Justin Simmons. They realize that over this year and maybe next year, there's not going to be a lot of opportunity to make the playoffs. And this is when it's best to really dig in deep and launch that rebuild in earnest. And so I actually love what the Broncos are doing. And though it'll probably feel like a step back for people this season, I think in reality, for the first time since Peyton Manning retired, the Denver Broncos actually know who they are, where they want to go, and have a clear roadmap on how to get there. It's unfortunate that they're only on year 2 of that, and that roadmap didn't start in 2016, but at least they're headed in the right way.
They are headed in the right direction. There is an identity. Oh, Sean's doing his thing again. He's talking to everybody. He's got them all. They're all.
Oh, that's Sean. I'm like, well, yeah, we're on air.
Sean, Sean,
got it.
No, not this Sean.
Right.
Scene, not Sean. SEAN.
Got it.
He's doing his thing again. Look, this team is establishing an identity. Every single NFL team, for the most part, their identity is established by their quarterback, and then it trickles down from there.
Yeah. The head coach quarterback relationship is a lot of it.
This team is starting to understand their identity based on their head coach, their starting quarterback, their QB1 in Bo Nix, and then the other pieces are going with it. They're all just riding. They're all coming along for a ride. And the beautiful thing is, it may not be a yacht yet.
No,
it might still be a canoe, but they're paddling in the same direction.
Right. We just watched
paddling in the same direction.
You gotta all be on the same.
I told you I was watching the rowing eights. Big fan of the rowing eights.
Everyone's got to be in sync, and that's a good way to describe this, Nate.
And BK's out there as the coxswain.
There you go. But the Broncos fans out here today, huge crowd today for the biggest of training camp, and you can hear a lot of noise at times. You can hear over over our talking here, but you'll notice not a lot of big cheers from the fans as well, because there's not a lot of maybe drama and excitement. And again, when you're at where the Broncos are at, that's a good thing. These practices have looked business-like. And in the end, that's really what you want. I think because it's been such a long run for the Broncos, only the Jets have a longer playoff-less streak, that the fan base has sort of come to these training camps and decided, like, well, not a lot of exciting happened. That's a bad sign. No, it's not. It's a good sign. It's a good sign. When you go to the Niners training camp, when you go to the Chiefs training camp, when you go to the Bills or the Ravens, you don't hear a lot of drama coming out of those camps because they're good. They know who they are and where they're going, and they know how to get there. So the business-like approach that Sean Payton has had here, and you correctly pointed out, Nate, the team identity, which very much appears to be all business. That's good. In fact, it's better than good. It's great. And it's been a long time since you've seen the Denver Broncos with that. And even if that means you don't end up with a winning record this season, it doesn't mean that they're going the wrong way. That's going to be an important part because what we are seeing out here is exciting in the long term, even if the short term isn't. Well, if you're looking for the perfect place to work, play, exercise, and socialize, well, I've got the place for you. You've already heard of it. It's the Denver Athletic Club right in the heart of downtown Denver. Been there for more than a century, so you've probably wondered what it's all about. Well, as a DAC member, you'll enjoy top-notch amenities like a full fitness center, licensed child care center, maybe you weren't thinking of that, spa, massage, Pilates, a golf simulator, and even more. But what truly sets the DAC apart is its vibrant community. It's a member-owned club, which means it's all about the members and could be all about you, offering year-round social events, co-working, dining, fun for the entire family. Remember, talked about that licensed child care center there as well. The Denver Athletic Club is truly a club for your whole life. And now for a limited time, if you've ever wanted to try it, why wouldn't you? New members pay nothing in initiation fees, zero zip, nada. So if you've ever thought about it, this is the time. Join the DAC today. Check out the Denver Athletic Club right now. No initiation fees, and see what's been made it at the heart of the city for more than 100 years. Nate, some interesting news coming out of Atlanta. And if you start putting some of the puzzle pieces together,
Ooh, I like puzzles.
Justin Simmons
always do puzzles around Christmas.
Yeah.
With the fam.
I hate puzzles.
Oh, I love puzzles. What do you hate about puzzles?
There's like a million pieces, and they're all like the same color, and you can't tell them. I don't know. I'm impatient, I guess.
You're impatient about It's a puzzle.
I know, but I don't want to.
What's wrong with putting together puzzles?
They're like 1,000 pieces or more, right? And you have like
the fun part.
Why is that fun? You got to flip them all right side up.
Gives you something to do with the family.
Oh.
Sitting there down in your, fourth bottle of wine around the holidays, and everybody's just like, hey, is this one pink or is this that red color of that guy's shirt in the corner?
They make like PlayStations and Xboxes now, right?
Yeah, but my family doesn't do that.
Okay.
My family doesn't.
Just like it's an option.
I think the last time that was a family thing for us was the Wii, like Wii bowling, and Wii tennis.
Yeah.
We used to do Rock Band a lot too. That was kind of a thing. Anyway, yeah, if you want to piece together some puzzles that involve a picture of the Atlanta Falcons logo, I think we are on the doorstep of seeing Justin Simmons in an Atlanta Falcons jersey. First and foremost, good for him. But I believe that is what is about to happen. They traded for Judon yesterday. Was that yesterday or was that this morning?
It was yesterday. It was yesterday. And all the word coming out of Atlanta was they are not done making moves.
Right. And so what has been talked about is that they are restructuring his deal, Judon's deal I'm speaking of,
right?
In order to basically throw some more things into a signing bonus type of allocation, et cetera. That would free up the space for them from a dollars and cents standpoint.
Because they're not the Broncos, but they're not cash poor down in Atlanta.
Right.
They got cash.
And the full expectation is that maneuvering to Judon's contract is being done to make room for number 31, Justin Simmons. I fully expect, I think that's going to happen by the end of the day today. It may not be the quote unquote official thing that comes out, but I think it'll be one of those where Shefty's got it or I don't know, Shams might have it. I don't know. But at some point that's coming out, and I think it's coming out before the end of the day today. If you follow Justin Simmons on social media, which I do, he posted a picture of himself from, getting ready for one of the games. I think it was actually last season. He in a red and black outfit. Hello. Sometimes you got to look for the subtle stuff, folks. You got to read between the lines. Okay. Sometimes it's a plot twist, right? Sometimes it's M. Night Shyamalan, and sometimes they're basically giving you all the answers up front.
Right.
And I think that's what Justin Simmons did with that picture that he posted yesterday that then featured like 3 little alarm clock emojis at the bottom.
How about that? Right.
As though he was basically waiting. We're just waiting. And I think it has, like I said, I think that the Falcons were set up to do 2 steps. Do the trade for Judon, redo his deal, sign Justin Simmons.
How about that? Wednesday morning, you're looking at the Atlanta Falcons defense, and maybe by Friday morning, you're looking at up the middle, Matthew Judon and Justin Simmons coming into town. That's a revamp of your defense in 2 players.
It's a spectacular move by them. Spectacular move.
And when you look at an NFC that is, we've been talking about this, the idea, of course, Broncos fans have been asking to get Simmons back. Simmons was not going to come back unless the Broncos paid him market value. If it was,
that wouldn't
have happened because they cut him because he already had a market value contract,
yes,
maybe even undervalued.
Well, but he also here's the other pieces to that puzzle. Yes, the Broncos can free up some various cap space if they really wanted to. Right, there are some things they could do that they could free up some cap space. But then what they do is they shortchange themselves in some of the position rooms and in some of the position groups in order to be able to add him back. I want him back. I'm not going to lie. I wanted him back. I like him as a player. I like his talent. I like him as a human being. I wanted that to be able to happen. Wasn't going to happen. I had to kind of move on from it. It was fun. It was fun to talk about, but it didn't happen.
And in Simmons' case, look, the one complaint that Simmons had rightly had over the course of his career, and he did not complain much, is that he had joined the team prior to the 2016 season, just missed the Super Bowl 50 squad, had never played in a playoff game. In fact, that only had one winning season, that 9-7 season in 2016. So Justin Simmons was obviously, at this point in his career, going to try to find a team that was maybe going to make some noise in the playoffs. And you look at Atlanta and say, well, why Atlanta? Atlanta went 7-10 last year. Minnesota was eliminated at 7-10. 9-8 made the playoffs. The Packers were the last team in at 9-8. So 2 games better, and they would have been a playoff team. Atlanta was not terribly good last year with this quarterbacking situation with Heineke and Ritter trying to work all that out. They have upgraded to Kirk Cousins, and Penix looked good potentially as a backup because Cousins, of course, tore the Achilles last year and missed a good chunk of the season. So they feel they're set at quarterback. That's the biggest spot. They play indoors where, Cousins has had great success. We know about talent, Bijan Robinson over there. You have Drake London. You have a lot of talent on that offense. And now on the defense, you go ahead and add Judon and potentially Justin Simmons. Now, all of a sudden, getting only 2 games better doesn't look like that much of a jump. And if you're the Atlanta Falcons, you could realistically say we should be a playoff team in a soft NFC this year. And I would love to see Justin Simmons get that chance.
I would like to see Justin get that opportunity as well, as I said, because I'm a fan of him personally, and I think he's got that opportunity to do some really good things down there in Atlanta. But again, you come back to what we talked about. It's a soft NFC. Mm-hmm. It's a soft NFC South. I mean, look.
Oh, is it ever? Tampa won it at 9-8.
Yeah, and Tampa's done some things. I'm not saying that they didn't.
But I don't think they get better than 9-8. I think that's about where they sit. So if I'm Atlanta and I'm thinking I can jump to 10 wins and win the division, yeah, I think you can.
I think the reason that I feel that way about the NFC South and in particular in Atlanta is because if you're going to make some efforts on defense, which I think is very smart for them to do, overall, you're looking at, all right, Baker Mayfield, right?
Right.
Bryce Young,
Derek Carr,
who might make a jump, might not. I don't know. I'm Ron Burgundy.
But isn't going to turn into, let's say, Josh Allen.
No, he's not.
Right.
So you put all that together and you're thinking to yourself, if we've got a pretty good defense, we can shut these other teams down and be in the division hunt. And I think that's what Judon does, and I certainly think that's what Justin Simmons does as soon as Simmons becomes official, which again, I believe will happen at some point today.
Well, and when you think about the Falcons, obviously, given that division that they're in, it means that their schedule isn't all that hard comparatively when you talk about strength of schedule. So all things kind of align pretty nicely for the Atlanta Falcons if that turns out to be the case. Obviously, you get a Pro Bowler in Judon, you get a terrific player in Simmons, and that changes the defense dramatically. So, yeah, the Falcons could be one of the. I'm not going to jump ahead of it and say they're dark horse for the Super Bowl, but would you say that the playoffs should be maybe an expectation? Yes, I think so. And when you're talking about strength of schedule, based on the record of last year, to get an idea where it is, the Browns have the hardest. And obviously, when you look at last year's records, rosters change. I get that. But the Browns' strength of schedule based on last year's opponents is 547. They have the toughest. The Ravens are next at 536. The Steelers at 533. And then the Packers and Texans. Packers will be in Denver tomorrow, tied at 526 winning percentage. The Atlanta Falcons, of course, courtesy of that division, four of the five bottom teams in the NFL in strength of schedule are all from that division. The Bucs are 27th at 478. The Panthers tied with the Bears at 467. One of the reasons, along with Caleb Williams and all the additions, the Bears are expected to jump back up. And then tied for the easiest schedule in the league, the Saints and the Falcons.
Right.
So you can imagine if that all comes together, that Justin Simmons might have an opportunity to play in a playoff game for the first time in his entire career, and maybe even as a division champ.
Yeah, absolutely he will. And I think he's got the great opportunity. And again, this is a guy that I think is a bit of a nightmare for some quarterbacks. I think he can make life hell for Baker Mayfield.
Patrick Mahomes isn't going to miss him in the division, tell you that much.
Of course not. Of course not. So I think there's a lot of really good things to be able to see out of that. Like I said, I'm very, very happy for him and for his family. And I'm hoping that all of this comes together today. I put it out there on social media. Good for him. Go kick some ass. It's what I think that he's going to wind up doing. And again, I really like the guy, and I wish him the absolute best.
Going back to the Broncos minus, obviously, when you're talking about not having him anymore. That part is kind of interesting, because when you look at the safety position now, and you have Brandon Jones, who's expected to start, and of course, and you'll probably have PJ Locke. Locke was pretty good. They moved on from Caden Stearns. Stearns obviously had more an injury situation more complicated than people understood as he got signed and then released by the Panthers. So when you're looking at the 3 safety rotation, and I think that's the way you want to look at it, of Jones, Locke, and Skinner, do you feel like that's enough? Because I know the familiarity that people had with Justin Simmons and Kareem Jackson, but Kareem Jackson, I think, was on the downside for a couple years. Justin Simmons is still Justin Simmons. But I actually look at those 3 safeties and think that last year what we were looking at was Jackson, Simmons, and Stearns at this point of the season. I'm not sure that the Broncos are going to drop off an awful lot in that position, even despite losing Justin Simmons.
I think they're going to, but I think it has more to do with that leadership back there and the veteran status of being able to perhaps see the offense tip their cap, or show their hand, I guess I should say, different cliche, to show their hand. And I think that when you have somebody that has spent the time that he has on an NFL field, that he is smart about being able to see what offenses are doing, or to be able to anticipate certain receivers' routes. And so I think that's what you're missing. I do actually believe it's going to be a drop off. I disagree with you.
He's been really the only ball hawk on the Broncos defense for years. And that includes Surtain, who certainly is talented, but not a guy that, at least
I think that,
at this stage, has been picking off a lot of passes.
But again, I go back to something we've talked about for 2 weeks now when it comes to this secondary, is that Pat is Pat.
Oh, yeah.
He's the best corner in the league. Okay, I know some people think it's Sauce Gardner.
Whatever.
I happen to believe that it's Pat.
It's arguably in any capacity.
In one way or another, he's in the top 3. So we can at least talk about that, if not the top 2. I mean, Brandon Stokely wouldn't want to line up against him. I know that right there. See, there's Stokely. So look, part of though that I'm concerned is you can have all of that talent, but if all the opposing quarterback has to do is avoid you,
right?
That's what a guy like Justin Simmons gave you. And that is what you need to find a way to replace. And might they have it with Wallace or Moss, or, I mean, the list goes on. Okay. Might they have it? Maybe, but I haven't seen it yet, nor am I necessarily going to believe it through these next 2 preseason games.
Right.
Talk to me when we are at Lumen Field.
That's fair. And Brandon Jones, of course, dealing with the hamstring injury, has not really been all the way back. We'll find out how much he plays in the joint practices and over the course of the preseason game on Sunday as well. I want to remind you, if you haven't had a chance on Wednesday, to check out Wellness Wednesday with our friend Dr. Rick Perea. Of course, Rick Perea from think14u.org. That's think14, the number 4u.org. The performance psychologist for the champions, quite frankly, worked in that capacity for the Broncos when they won Super Bowl 50, but has also done that for so many sports teams across multiple sports. In the NFL alone, the Seahawks and the Bears and the Browns, to name a few. Worked with the Rockies when the Rockies were actually making playoffs, and that happened not that long ago, believe it or not, with the Rapids before as well. So we know what he can do in the field of sports as well, in sports performance, and that can help a lot of youth athletes, but he also works in the field of business as well, and helping business people in whatever business you do, make sure that you maximize your potential and work to make sure that you are doing the most you can do and making yourself the happiest you can be while you're at it. So every Wednesday you can check out Wellness Wednesday with Dr. Rick Perea, and hope you take a look at it. Obviously, we'll have it at Mile High Sports, and you can catch it on Mile High Sports Radio. So make sure you visit it, but also go to the website and see what Dr. Rick can do for you. It is think14u.org. Think1, the number 4, u.org. World champion performance psychologist. He's helped them. He can help you as well. give his website a look, reach out to Dr. Rick and find out. We'll have an opportunity to talk to Denver Gazette writer Chris Thomasson. Chris, of course, here every single day covering for the terrific newspaper there. The idea that the Broncos will keep 3 quarterbacks, that's not a shock because the new rule allows you to elevate a third quarterback all the time and not expose him to the practice squad. But might the Broncos need to keep all 3 on their 53? And what does that mean? We'll talk about that with the Denver Gazette's Chris Thomasson next. Welcome back to the show live from Broncos camp at Dove Valley, the last day of Broncos practice, because tomorrow the Packers will come in and we'll have a joint practice. Joining us from the Denver Gazette is Broncos writer Chris Thomasson. Chris, thanks for joining us. We now into the final last couple days of training camp. Obviously, the next preseason game comes up this weekend. Bo Nix named as the starter for that already. I guess let's start there. Sean Payton has had a rookie quarterback start exactly 1 game for him, Ian Book, back when he was with the Saints. It sounds like this is maybe going to be 2 starting in week 1 with Bo Nix, because even though he is a rookie, this continues to kind of bubble its way up towards the result that I think everyone expected. But even more than that, you can hear it in Sean Payton's voice. You've been able to the entire draft process. He simply really likes what Bo Nix does on a football field.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. As I noted in the paper today, I mean, John Elway won his first Super Bowl against the Packers, and now Bo Nix can win the starting job against the Packers. They have a joint practice, of course, on Friday here at Broncos Park, and then a preseason game on Sunday. And unless Nix slips on a banana peel and is totally a disaster, I would imagine he's going to win the starting job. I mean, he had a very solid performance last Sunday against the Colts. I would think, last year, hardly any starters played in the preseason finale against Arizona. So I would think they just want to make sure Bo Nix, he's okay, potentially name him the starter next week, and then Zach Wilson goes the distance pretty much against the Cardinals. I would think maybe with Stidham, in relief if anything happens to Wilson in that particular game. But basically, yeah, you can tell how much Sean loves Bo Nix. His tone has changed even a little bit more after that game against Indianapolis. 15 of 21, passer rating of about 102, touchdown, scored on 4 of the 5 possessions in which he was in the game, and then the only one they didn't was a Lucas Kroll fumble
on a completed pass on top of that.
Correct.
So, yeah, and the other part that's valuable about that, I believe he finished roughly 14 for 17, I think, on the last passes too, with the early kind of hiccups and a lot of those short and intermediate routes. But then again, that's what Sean Payton wants to run. So this feels as if this is sort of, if not a done deal, very close to it, except you said a banana peel or something like that. It'd have to be a disaster for Bo Nix to lose this job. But remember, the Packers, at least according to head coach Matt LaFleur, are not going to play the majority of their starters in the game on Sunday, though they will be out here for joint practice because that has a lot of value to the coaches. But one of the situations that went a little haywire was a botched snap in the preseason game. And all of a sudden, the center position in which early on in camp, Luke Wattenberg had really sort of earned the lion's share. But now it feels like maybe that position's back up in the air again.
Well, I still think Luke Wattenberg is in solid position. He's been running with the first team most all of training camp, got the start against the Colts. He initially was listed as the lone starter, or still is on the depth chart. Sean Payton kind of backtracked a little bit, said, well, maybe I could have put an or in there and thrown in Alex Forsythe. But it is interesting that Forsythe is also working at guard. So they're kind of anticipating, well, maybe he can be that first guy up at both center or guard.
And yesterday,
in a game.
where we sit here at the end of the south of the end zone, we watched a lot of the red zone practices, and Mustipher was in with the first team with all the starters and with Nix for a while there as well. And so maybe the idea, you're right, Forsythe seems to be a guy that they maybe want to swing a little bit. But is that any sort of is it a push for Wattenberg? Is it just an idea they want to see what they have in Mustipher before maybe you move on from a guy like that's a veteran?
He's kind of a mystery, Mustipher, because Payton has never mentioned him. Anytime you ask him about the center battle. He says, oh, Luke Wattenberg and Forsythe, it's close, or this and that. He has never mentioned this training camp the name of Sam Mustipher. And back when he signed in the spring, I figured, hey, this guy probably is a starting center. He's got 44 career starts.
That's what I thought too.
And now he's on the third team. I mean, unless it's some master plan of deception, who knows? Or maybe they're going to try to feature him in these final preseason games, especially the last one, to try to get a trade in order for him rather than just release him. But at this point, it would be a surprise if he makes the team, I would think.
Now, over at the cornerback position, the Broncos in defensive backfield getting healthier. Brandon Jones with the hamstring injury recovering. Levi Wallace still recovering, not expected to play. Wallace looked like he had at least first dibs at the starting job opposite Pat Surtain. Are you concerned that if he misses this game, that may put that at risk, or has he done enough in the NFL level as a veteran to probably still hold that role unless somebody really steps up this weekend?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because he had really stepped up, and I thought he was the leading guy to be the other starter at cornerback, as you mentioned, and then he hurts his hamstring. I did ask Peyton after the depth chart came out, because it was listed on the first team as Riley Moss or Damari Mathis at the other cornerback spot. And I asked him specifically about Levi Wallace. He said, oh, no, he's still in the mix, which I'm sure he is, but just by virtue of missing this time, certainly could hamper him. So, I assume he's not playing Sunday against Green Bay. And if Moss or Mathis steps up and kind of wins that battle, maybe they go with one of those guys to start the season. But of course, you know as well as I do, just because if he doesn't start week one, when he gets fully healthy, maybe he's back in the lineup, later in the season.
Right. And there's no reason to push a veteran so much out here in training camp and preseason, because you kind of know what you've got in there and you don't want to run the risk of re-injuring it, especially since what's behind him are a lot of question marks. So that's part of the equation too. These joint practices coming up tomorrow, of course, with the Packers. This is obviously an opportunity to go maybe hit somebody else for a change. You're tired of hitting your own guys. Obviously, you want to make sure the emotions don't run too high. But for Sean Payton and for Matt LaFleur, the opportunity to script the exact situations they want, the opportunity to be able to work on things as opposed to hope that the situation comes up in the course of a preseason game with the players you want happening to be on the field at the time. These joint practices are immensely valuable. In fact, many coaches will tell you they're more valuable than the preseason games themselves. Do you see it that way?
Yeah, I've heard that before, because your starters are getting more reps against another team. I mean, there's not the tackling that there is in a preseason game, but I can see that particular point. And it's kind of interesting that they're only doing it one day. I mean, last year they did it 2 days with the Rams, but that seems to be the trend, because the second day is when the fights start brewing, because whoever gets their butt kicked goes back to the hotel that night and dwells upon it, and then comes out and throws a cheap shot because they're ticked off at what happened the day before. So LaFleur, when he actually announced the joint practice first back in the spring, said that very point, that he prefers the one-day situation. And Sean Payton and Matt LaFleur, they talked on the phone earlier this week about situations, probably what they want to work on. I mean, obviously the teams don't play this season. Well, they hope to play, and the only way that would be possible would be in the Super Bowl. So they could pretty much be open with each other about the things that they want to work on Friday.
Yeah, especially given the fact the Packers, as they mentioned, are not going to play the majority of their starters in this second game. So this has been overall, now that the training camp is kind of running to a close here, compare and contrast, if you could, Sean Payton's first year with the whirlwind of course, you're taking over a new team, didn't have a good relationship with the quarterback, compared to this year where it seems as if Sean Payton is sort of fully in control and far more comfortable this time around.
Yeah, he said something interesting a couple of weeks ago at the start of training camp, that he feels more comfortable heading into this training camp because he's seen the players in tackling type situations live. I mean, he came in last year, he saw them in the spring. He hadn't seen them in tackle type situations. And before the first day in pads, he pretty much said that, hey, some players, there's a big difference when you put on the pads and in terms of the evaluation. So I think he entered this training camp, as any coach would in his second year, with more of a comfort level, and that I imagine has continued throughout the camp.
So now with the idea of Bo Nix potentially starting week one, the quarterback, flip back to that real quick, because there are a lot of people looking at the idea of Wilson or Stidham as the backup. Do you think that's an actual competition, or do you think the rule changes which allow teams to basically elevate a third quarterback and not have to expose them to waivers off the practice squad every week? Do you think that even particularly matters this time around?
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if they keep 3 quarterbacks on the 53-man roster. Stidham has, by all accounts, done well, and he got a raw deal against the Colts with all the penalties and the bobbled interception. So it's not like he's played poorly, and it's always good to have a veteran in the quarterback room just to give that advice to younger players. And I would think if Stidham's on the roster, he would be the backup. I think the big key is Zach Wilson, and might be a risk. I mean, he played pretty well against the Colts.
Yeah.
Might be a risk trying to put him on the practice squad, and who knows, he might not even want to go that route. He might just say, hey, I was the number 2 pick in the draft a couple years ago. I'm not going to be embarrassed by going on the practice squad. I'm going to go out as a free agent and see where I can land. Plus, I think Peyton would welcome continuing to work with Zach Wilson. I mean, he's known Peyton as a quarterback guru and all that kind of stuff. And if they just cut him and he moves on, it would be like, well, what about this reclamation project? I guess it didn't work with Wilson. So wouldn't be surprised if they kept 3 quarterbacks.
So for the first time in a few years, actually, the Broncos are going to have some difficult decisions with cuts. You know, there are guys on the bubble. There are certain position groups that look pretty loaded. For a team that has not been good for the majority of the last decade, oftentimes those cuts aren't as difficult. But this time around, there are some position groups that are going to be more challenging to move on from. What are the ones that you particularly look at and think it's going to be hard to trim down?
Yeah,
especially if they keep 3 quarterbacks.
Yeah, let's start on the offense. If they keep 3 quarterbacks, and let's say they keep 4 tight ends because they like Nate Atkins as the 4th guy, and let's say they keep 6 receivers, that's 13 guys right there, and you got to probably skimp at some position on defense. I mean, let's look at outside linebacker. Do you keep 5 outside linebackers? I mean, obviously, you got Cooper, Browning, and Benito, and Ellis, you know, and Thomas Incombe has looked pretty good. Do you risk trying to get him down to the practice squad? How many? I mean, obviously, you usually keep 4 safeties. That's always a position that you can skimp a little bit at. But then you've got the defensive line too. You know, you got a veteran guy like Angelo Blackson who started the other day. I mean, do you kind of keep him? And you got Matt Henningsen, who, you know, has been decent the last couple of years, but he was kind of in late on Sunday's game playing with the scrubs. So do you keep 5 defensive linemen or 6? And and then what do you do at inside linebacker? I mean, obviously you got 3 guys who are locks in Alex Singleton, Cody Barton, and I would think Jonas Griffith, but you got Lavelle Bailey as an undrafted free agent. You know, do you possibly keep him on the 53 or try to get him on the practice squad?
So, what happens when Drew Sanders eventually gets healthy as well?
You're well, I think you kind of worry about that when the time comes,
right? Because
somebody else probably gets hurt before then. But yeah, if you keep extra guys on offense, then you're going to have to keep less guys on defense, and that's where maybe the tough decisions could possibly come.
Obviously, it's going to be an interesting last couple of days at camp, and of course, then the real decision-making happens, of course, after the 3rd preseason game. You'll want to pay attention to Chris Thomasson, everything he's writing in the Denver Gazette. Check out today's story. Talk specifically about a lot of these opportunities here for Bo Nix and for the Broncos over the course of these last couple of days and their next preseason game. Always good to talk to you, Chris. Appreciate the time.
All right. Thanks a lot. Really appreciate it.
Thanks so much. We'll be back with more live from Broncos training camp at Broncos Park at Dove Valley with everyone in Mile High Sports team coverage here. We'll do more of that next.
All right.
I cut you if you get fights. I have $500,000 fine, so don't do it. It's not like we have It's like most of the crowd's still there. Welcome back to Broncos training camp at Broncos Park. I can see Nate Lundy over there. Powered by Common Spirit. I'm doing the job here. So the 6 signs around here remind me all the time. Joining us, you've heard her on the program before, is Taylor Kilgore from Fox 31. Taylor, thanks for joining me today. Yeah. And beautiful day out here at Broncos Park, and the last day in which the Broncos have to hit the Broncos. So there's some energy there always when that happens with the Packers coming in for the joint practice tomorrow. But let's just start with the crowds today, which are I think obviously the biggest we've seen all training camp. And this happened, of course, yesterday. The Broncos were off Monday and Tuesday for the public. And then I think some of this has to do with the fact what they saw last weekend maybe made them believe again.
Well, I turned the corner yesterday when I'm pulling into the parking lot and I'm looking at that hill going, wow, there's already a dense crowd. Today, even more fans out there. And I do see the correlation. I think it's a direct result of, hey, we're curious. We like what we saw on Sunday. Let's go see a little bit more before they close down training camp. So, yeah, I think it's exciting. I also think I've seen a lot of 10 jerseys, which is interesting.
We had a report yesterday that at least for a time, the team store sold out of 10s yesterday.
Serious? I believe it.
Yeah.
Because I see them out here on the hill. It's exciting.
Yeah, we know where they went. They're just right here.
They're right out there. Yeah. Buy them at the team store, walk on over, watch
Throw
practice.
them on and go. Yeah.
It works out well. No, and I get it because I'm watching the game on Sunday and I'm going, wait, I'm having fun. This is the preseason and I'm having fun watching this. I think everyone was feeling that. And we're curious, right? We want to see if this is going to work out. Obviously, you've heard from the Broncos brass being like, this is our guy. We're excited, but it's still very much a competition. Then they roll out Bo Nix and he does the job and he does it well and he scores points. Honestly, that's what we want to see right now.
4 out of 5 drives with scores. The only one, obviously, Lucas Kroll fumbled the completed pass and that ended that drive. But yeah, I mean, it's purportedly been a competition, but really it wasn't.
Yeah.
This has always been about when does Bo Nix take the starting job. And I always felt it was going to be, well, about now. And sure enough, that's the case. Sean Payton's been effusive in his praise. That hasn't stopped. So I think we know now the quarterback situation is basically set. You understand who the starter is. Now you can start looking at some of the other parts of this team. And we talked a little bit before you came on, the idea that defensively especially, that there is energy, there has become some leadership. I know when John Franklin Myers arrived from New York early on in training camp, he had a chance to talk with the press over at the podium and suggested that even though he was new to the team, that didn't really change anything. He talked about the line needs to show up and show it every day. It's like every day you're on the field is another day to show what you can do. Why would I treat practices different than a game? That kind of mindset seems to be a little more across the board on the Broncos defense than last year.
I have to say, defensively, I have noticed such an energy shift out here on the practice field. Now, maybe that's because we've covered this team for a long time with Justin Simmons being that veteran voice.
Still weird seeing a 31 run around and have it not be Justin Simmons.
It is weird, and everyone misses him. But let's be honest, he's been with this team for so long. He was that leader, and he had his own leadership style. It makes him a stand-up human, and he's a great guy. But, it was a different attitude than what we're seeing right now. I'm seeing the edge guys. They're getting after it vocally out here, which is fun to hear because, last year there was a lot of young guys kind of stepping into those roles. I think confidence adds to that. But like you just mentioned, new players placed in, bringing that intense energy, cranks everything up. Kareem Jackson, we miss him. Justin Simmons, we miss him. But I am totally seeing a different energy shift on that defense. And I think it's an edge that they were missing. And they've been missing for a long time.
That's a really good observation, Taylor, because when you talk about moving on from Justin Simmons, there's really nothing, there's nothing bad you can say about Justin Simmons, but he isn't the get in your face type of leader. He's not even really the rah-rah leader. He's the I show up, I'm a professional, I do what I do, and you sort of follow me, follow what I do, and you'll be successful. Pat Surtain's much the same way, not a talkative guy. He does most of it on the field. And so that there was the idea that while you have this you have a couple of guys last year that certainly know how to set a standard for young players to follow, but there's not a lot of getting after it with younger guys or making sure there's not a lot of emotion flowing there. And for defensive players, some of them need that emotion. And so if you have some more aggressive guys, whether it's Franklin Myers, whether it's returners, or whether it's Cooper or Baron Browning. Some of these guys that have a little more of their personality that feels like, even though because they weren't Justin Simmons or Pat Surtain, probably felt maybe not my turn to speak up.
Sure.
Now they're sort of freed to release their own sort of personality.
Yeah.
And that seems to be something in this second year under Sean Payton across the board that I think I've seen a lot of.
Yeah.
It's the camp has been run tight. It's been run efficiently and professionally, but it doesn't mean that there hasn't been room for individual expression like you're talking about. There's also, you can see Quinn Miners has gone back to being the belly. The jersey's all the way up there. And, not every player is doing that, but Payton, despite his reputation as being kind of a hard coach, seems to be perfectly okay with you be yourself.
Yes.
As long as you're doing your job.
Well, and I will say that is what new brings, young brings, youth energy brings a whole different mindset out here. And we're seeing it. And you knew that Sean Payton has been energized by that. He's talked a lot about the young guys on this roster and how he's enjoying that energy, and the young guys on his coaching staff that he's brought in. He's enjoyed that as well. So I think that's what we're seeing is guys kind of bring in that new flavor, that new juice, that new excitement. Let's be honest. When you've been in the league for a really long time, you conduct yourself as a pro. This is what you do. You are a professional. You are good at it. That's why you're in the league still. But you've done this before, and you've done it many times before. Justin Simmons, I think it would have been his 9th training camp here. And I think that changing of the guard is already being fruitful for the Broncos. I like the energy. And then obviously when you have a rookie quarterback that everyone's excited about, second highest draft pick the Broncos have ever brought in, you're excited about that too.
Yeah.
So I think we're seeing it on both sides of the ball. And there's competition. I mean, we're watching it right in front of us right now with the receivers. There is competition out here. These guys are getting after it. And it's only going to get cranked up tomorrow because that's when the real fun starts. Let's be honest. Tomorrow's the game.
It is. Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up because that's something that I've been trying to explain too, that, not every coach feels that way, but more and more. And the younger coaches start to feel that way. And LaFleur for the Packers is one of them. His starters will play in the joint practice tomorrow here and not in the game on Sunday because the value of this, if you think about it from a standpoint, if you're coming out on Friday and you're seeing it, if you wanted to say work on red zone offense with your starters, right? Red zone.
See, we're right by the action.
There you go, everyone. The pass goes a little sideways and knocks the camera there. So we're right. If you're wondering how close we are to the field,
we're right
there.
Here.
You go. But you can imagine
the next one.
In these cases, right? You're trying to set up like red zone tries with your starters, hopefully against their starters. If it's preseason, it's blind luck if that occurs. Now, when you're setting up joint practices, Sean Payton and Matt LaFleur can take 10 seconds, meet in the middle of the field and say, hey, I wanted to line up my guys for a little bit here. I wanted to try 3 more of these. And the coach, that's fine. I got a couple guys I wanted. So you literally set up exactly what you want to practice. And because you don't play the Packers this year, who cares?
No.
You can run what you want. They can run what they want. You're not giving anything away unless both of these teams end up in the Super Bowl.
Well, and we know both of these teams are the kind of coaches that keep that stuff close to the vest.
Right.
Had they been meeting in the regular season, coaches already talked about the kickoffs that they're going to practice and how they will be the only 2 teams with that film. So I think we're going to see some of that tomorrow, which is exciting, just with the new kickoff rules, which are still
I got the impression that Payton and LaFleur have kind of agreed, like we have some ideas.
Let's
on this. Workshop these together.
And
then not tell anybody.
Well, and I think the element of surprise come week 1 is going to be really fun.
And that's the Sean Payton special with surprise kickoffs, as we know. So.
Well, and let's be honest, with Sean Payton, everything is under wraps. And that's the professionalism. That's the experience shining through. That's how they got Bo Nix. He didn't make it clear that that's who they wanted ever. So maybe we disagree on that. But I think that, he's a guy that's guarded and is keeping things kind of low key. But tomorrow is a time to unleash a little bit. And you are following that script. I mean, what a benefit. It's the game before the game. And whoever is on that hill over there for the final day of training camp, they're going to get a show because hopefully we have some intense moments, some real competition, maybe a scuffle or 2. We always love that.
And no injuries. That's the trick, obviously, is trying for injuries.
Yes.
But you think about that, and if really tomorrow's is the biggest event of the weekend, and I agree with you, it is. It's bigger than the game. But then the third game, presumably following Sean Payton's pattern, and a lot of coaches, the starters aren't going to play.
Right.
So in this case, when you look at the rest of camp and you look at the rest of how this preseason is going to go, really after tomorrow, the Broncos as starters, and as the coaches start to decide who their starters are, they're already starting to maybe look ahead a little bit towards week 1 in Seattle, because you probably won't see them again for any stretch of time after after Sunday's game against the Packers, which, as you pointed out, will be very vanilla and very bland when it comes to the scheme.
But really, I will argue Game 3 of the preseason will be very exciting as well.
It will be for different reasons.
For the people that are trying to make this roster, we always love those moments. But yes, I think the coaching staff back there, they've already started scheming for Seattle. I think this staff is always a week or two ahead, and that's just kind of the nature of the league. And man, I hope this season opener in Seattle goes a lot better than a couple years ago.
I don't know if it can go much worse. So, I mean, that's obviously a good sign.
Game we'll never forget, unfortunately.
You get another crack at it. But out here, you're right, because there are a lot of position groups, the wide receiver core, as you brought up, really very deep, very interesting. Yeah. But one of the challenges with that, because I've looked over it and I've been impressed with Vele. I still believe in Troy Franklin. I think that I've seen enough from him in college that this is a matter of you have to learn to get off of press coverage in a manner that you haven't had to in college. He'll get it. I'm not that concerned about that. But the idea of keeping, let's say 6 wide receivers, there are a lot of guys that were effective even last year. Little Jordan Humphrey, Brandon Johnson, who was second on the team in touchdown receptions. These guys are now bubble guys.
He was the most consistent receiver for them.
Yeah.
I know.
And so now these guys are on the bubble, but at the same time, there's one of the things that I caution Broncos fans about, because you look at the talent, look at all the talent on paper. Look at the running backs. Well, look at what they have in Estime now, and maybe you like Watson. But at the same time, until this turns into production on an NFL field, this is all projection. And we've seen players with better pedigrees. Zach Wilson's one of them, quite frankly. And it doesn't always pan out. And so that's where I look at this wide receiver competition in the most part, because there are a bunch of guys that on paper and pure talent-wise deserve to make the team. But how many of them are actually going to be able to translate that to NFL success? And we don't really know. That makes it a little fraud. Because sometimes what you see out here is fool's gold.
Yeah, sometimes we get super excited. We've seen it in the last few years in Broncos country. We're like, this is a great camp. This is competitive. We're excited. And it doesn't work out. And a lot of guys don't translate to the NFL game. I will say that, judging by what Sean Payton is telling us, he's a guy that's not afraid to go with the undrafted free agent. He doesn't care. Once they're out here, you get a free shot, and he's made that clear. So I think he's someone that's confident in his decisions, but he's also someone that is meticulous in taking advantage of every snap out here, because evaluation, that's what it comes down to. And he has said it time and time again. He doesn't want to be the guy that sees someone that he cut excel for someone else.
Yeah.
But he did say yesterday at the podium, when it comes to receivers, he's probably going to see a few of these guys playing for other teams. And that's just the nature of the numbers game. You say 6 receivers. I mean, can they keep one more? I don't know. Are they going to keep all 3 quarterbacks? Are they going to keep
4 running backs?
What do you do? I would love to keep them all. This is why I could never be a head coach or a GM, because I get so invested in what we see out here. But you mentioned Devon Vele. He's a guy that we talked to yesterday, and he's 26 years old as a rookie. And he understands the moment. I expect to see him take advantage of every opportunity he has out here. And he's exciting to watch. And that's just one of many stories you could make for this receiver.
Yeah, and obviously you run into that spot where how well does it translate? Vele and Nix were unable to hook up in the game last week because it looked as if, I don't know, it kind of went over the all-22. I don't know the play call. They don't.
They don't tell you the play sheet?
They don't tell me.
Oh, I have the wristband. I like to bust it out during the game.
but it looks very much as if Vele came to the inside and Nix was expecting him to go to the back corner. And these are the kind of things that, obviously, we're talking about 2 rookies. You don't freak out about it. But those are the kind of things that they don't happen out here when it's 7-on-7s or they're in shells. But then all of a sudden, when you're facing against another team, those kind of mistakes happen. So you have to watch that as well.
And those are the mistakes that can't happen again.
Right.
Which is what Peyton wants.
And that's the trick. Mistakes are fine.
Yep.
Repeating mistakes.
Don't do it again.
Is where you try to avoid that.
That's true.
Back to Sean Payton and Bo Nix for a minute, and even really less about Nix and more about Payton. Payton has never really sort of raised, groomed, or whatever you want to call it, a rookie quarterback to be his starter. He's only had 1 rookie quarterback ever start a game, ever. In this case, however, with Bo Nix, Payton almost seems rejuvenated as a coach, and that's almost impossible to miss just standing out here.
Well, it's funny because you always say, well, it's never been done before. He's never done this before. It's not because he didn't want to. He never had to. And
you're not going to try rookies when you have Drew Brees.
When you got Drew Brees, you're kind of chilling, at that point. But I think he is rejuvenated by the situation. And we've seen that, honestly, through the off-season program. There was a different energy, a different looseness. I think he likes the idea of the creativity that he could use, maybe more his traditional system that he could use that it seemed last year wasn't quite compatible with Russell Wilson. I think he's excited, but he's also tempering those expectations by saying, yeah, it's still a competition. He's got to earn it. It's no one's job. Everyone's doing a good job. Every
Which
time we ask
you
him a
have
question,
to do. You
and I
never want to
appreciate the
just
approach.
anoint somebody.
Well, and a lot of franchises do.
Right.
He's
And
our
that can be a
saving
mistake.
grace. Number one, they're going to change everything. And maybe that's not always the right approach. And it doesn't seem like it's the right approach here. So I like the way he's kind of conducted this race during camp. It'll be interesting to see what happens and how Jarrett Stidham feels when things shake out the way we believe they will. But that's what makes it exciting.
It does. We'll find out the last couple of days of practice underway now. The joint practice tomorrow, and then, of course, the second preseason game. Bo Nix will start that as well.
First game at home.
First game at home. We'll find
that.
out. Expect to see all those number 10 jerseys they sold out
there'll be a lot.
I guess, over there. Taylor Kilgore from Fox 31 and also hosts the Colorado Sports Night over at KWGN Channel 2. Make sure you check her out and all they're putting together over there. Great team over there. We'll even have an opportunity to talk to some of your colleagues from there tomorrow.
See,
we're
working it in.
So,
I love it.
Yeah. Well, I like to think it's great minds. Or in my case, average minds trying to moosh off of great minds. But it's great to have you. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Sean.
All right, take care. We'll be back with more from Broncos training camp at Mile High Sports next. Thanks to Taylor Kilgore for joining us from Fox 31. We are live at Broncos Park out at Dove Valley. The Broncos wrapping up their practice as we speak, and that leads us into, Nate, the season, which is not all that far away. They have the preseason game against the Packers following the joint practice tomorrow. That'll be on Sunday night, and then you have one more preseason in which presumably, to follow Sean Payton's pattern, the starters really will not play, and then you're back at it. The regular season will be upon us in no time, and so you're already looking at some of the ideas for win totals for teams. Across the board, and you and I
we're getting ready. The Nuggets schedule's coming out today.
Right. Well, they already shared a couple of days ago the schedule for the Cup, the in-season tournament that has a name this year. I can't remember what it is.
WGAF.
You
know what that stands for.
It's not important.
It's not a radio station. It stands for something else.
They're just regular season games.
No, but the Nuggets schedule, I think, is due out today. Apparently, they're going to open at home against the Thunder, though. Wasn't that yesterday? Am I remembering that right, or did I dream that?
No,
I think that part got Danny giving me a thumbs up. All right, so
right.
that was in fact the case. Okay, so win totals, Sean. What I have, similar to yesterday that we were talking about here on the show, is the way people are betting on BetMGM. Hat tip to my buddy John Ewing at BetMGM, who works in their communications office, who shares these things out with us.
He's a machine.
He really is, and there's a few of them in the excuse me that work in that office, but he's one of them. Does a great job of keeping us up to date again on. So what we're talking about, if you weren't with us yesterday, we talk about the number of tickets. We talk about the handle. Tickets are physical tickets. Handle means how much of the money is out there. So I want to talk about some of these based on just the way people are betting and where we see the dollars going. And Sean, let's start with obviously the Denver Broncos. Their number has been at 5.5. It has been at 5.5 since it opened. It is still at 5.5 as we speak. And if you believe they are going to win 5 games, like I do, you could get that at plus odds. The odds now almost even in terms of the over or the under. The over right now at BetMGM is a -105. The under is a -115. You and I are both on the same page. We believe the Broncos are going to go under. However, 81% of the money is on the over.
Well, that doesn't shock me.
There's a lot of people. There's people buying into the idea that this team can do, maybe even substandard from what they did last year, but that's what people are buying in on right now. That is where the money is. 81% of the money on the Broncos to go over 5.5 wins. Let's talk about the rest of the AFC West.
Okay.
The favorites, the Kansas City Chiefs. Nothing has moved in their total. Their over-under is at 11.5. It's obviously the biggest amongst the AFC West teams. And it's frankly right now pretty close to 50-50 in terms of the over or the under. So as I did yesterday, Sean, I hand you $100 that is not yours. It belongs to, let's say we took it from Sean Payton, just right out of his pocket. And I give you $100 and I say, are you going over or under for the Kansas City Chiefs on their win total?
I'm going to go under. They finished with 11 wins last year. I think that's where they're likely to get this year. I think that's enough to win the AFC West again. I think their schedule obviously is brutal every single year. That's what happens when you get the first place ones. And I also think as the Chiefs continue to understand what they are, it's not as if you can afford to take any opponents in the NFL lightly. The 17-game schedule doesn't really allow you to do that. But I do think that they understand what sort of effort is required on certain teams. I think they'll probably get to 11. Could they get over it? Of course they could. But if you were asking me, do I have to pick one? I think they're going to finish 11-6. So I'd take the under.
And I will tell you that I am going to take the over on their win total sitting at 11.5. I think they are good for a dozen. And here's why. I think they are going to sweep the division.
That would not shock me in the slightest.
I think they are going to. I think they are going to sweep the division, which means amongst the rest of their games, I only need them to be 6-5. I literally only need them to go 6-5 amongst the other 11 games.
Yeah,
and they would hit 12.
That's a good point. You might be able to win me over on that.
That is where my brain goes when it comes to this. 43% of the money on the over, 57% on the under, courtesy of BetMGM. Let's talk about those Los Angeles Chargers, shall we? 88% of the money on the over, which I'm thinking probably happened before the words plantar fasciitis were brought up for Justin Herbert. 88% of the money on the over. Their win total, Sean, sits at 8.5. Where are you leaning?
Oh, boy. See, these folks in Vegas are good, Nate. I don't think they get there. I think I am just nervous. I thought the Chargers could be as much as a 10-win team, but I'm nervous about the health. I'm nervous about the wide receiver spot. I'm nervous about the offense. I think this is an 8-9 team, probably at best now. So I'll take the under.
Okay. I'm in agreement with you there. I think they're going to finish right around 7 or 8. I think it's going to be right there. I think this is a bet that you might comfortably get a hold of. Here's what's really fun. As of right now, if you believe that they are going to go under, it is plus 135.
Ooh,
that's pretty solid payday for something that you and I both believe that whether it's the lingering foot, whether it's the challenges of not having a Keenan Allen and things like that anymore, whether it's the changes in the backfield, whatever it is, understand that I believe that they're good for 7 or 8. I think they're going to finish just below 500 in Jim Harbaugh's first year with the Chargers. And so we wrap things up with the Las Vegas Raiders. Sean, 72% of the money on the over there at 6.5.
No, I'm taking the under on that.
Okay.
I think the Raiders quarterbacking situation is in flux. Obviously, I think, look, even Antonio Pierce admitted, basically saying we're not going to have a blockbuster offense at the beginning of training camp. If you don't, quite frankly, it's really hard to win big in the NFL. So I'll take the under on the Raiders.
Okay. I don't disagree with you there. It's probably one that I would stay away from, to be honest with you. I'm not a big fan of that number. I think it's really well set. I don't have a strong feeling one way or the other, so it's probably one that I would avoid. Let me talk about the top dogs and the bottom of the barrel, shall we?
Yeah.
So I told you that the win total for Kansas City is at 11.5. There's only one other team at 11.5. That's the San Francisco 49ers. Plus odds, by the way, if you believe they are going to get to a dozen. I am going to play the under on that one. I think people are not giving the LA Rams enough credit, and I also think Seattle is always a pain in the butt in that particular division. They always manage to do that. But 11.5 for the Niners. What say you?
I also think under. I think that's an 11-win team, and I think it's probably enough to win the West. But I think we talked about this yesterday. The Rams are being dramatically underrated. They could be really
if
dangerous.
Stafford is fine this season,
they could win. They could win the Super Bowl. They legitimately could win the Super Bowl.
It's a good team with a good coach.
So I would say 11 sounds right for the Niners. So I will take the under on that as well. I don't love it much like the Chiefs. Would it shock me if they got to 12? No, but if you had to tell me you have to pick one, I say they win 11 games in the under.
Which quick side note, that would say that you're going over on the LA Rams, which are at 8.5.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay,
I am.
3 other AFC teams are at 10.5. That is Baltimore, Buffalo, and Cincinnati.
Baltimore, yes.
Okay.
Buffalo, they have to get to 11 wins.
Yes.
In that division.
Plus odds for the over.
No, I don't think they get over that. And
10.5 for Cincinnati?
No. I'll take Baltimore, and I'll take the under for Buffalo and Cincy.
Okay. 2 NFC teams that are at 10.5. I present you the Detroit Lions and the Philadelphia Eagles.
The Lions, boy, that's tough. The Eagles, again, that's an interesting soft division, but you have to get to 11. I think the Eagles do get there. I think they're set for a bounce back. I think that's where they end up. The Lions, I think, will regress a little. They won't sneak up on anybody this time. But then again, they're not in a strong division, although Chicago's more dangerous. Minnesota just lost J.J. McCarthy for the season, so that changes that as well. Boy, they have to get to 11.
11.
I'll take it. I'll say okay. Over for both.
Okay. Now let's talk bottom of the barrel. The lowest is the New England Patriots. They opened at 5.5. They're actually down to 4.5 on the over/under for the Pats. I am all about the under. I legit think the Pats have the number 1 pick come next April.
It is hard to lose.
I believe the New England Patriots will have the number 1 pick in April of 2025.
So they have to. Oh boy. Yeah, I'll probably take the under as well because look, every other team in the division, including the Jets, is supposed to be better. The expectations are better.
And I've already told you, I do not think Aaron Rodgers is going to make it through the season.
I don't either. In fact, I don't will love the Jets this year
if he plays 17
but
games.
Yeah, the Patriots they're terrible.
They're bad. They're just a bad team.
I think they know they're terrible.
Yes.
and they're sort of in the rebuild.
And I think they're ready for the number 1 pick coming up in April.
Yeah,
joining the Broncos at a 5.5 win total are the Carolina Panthers.
Under.
Okay. Got you there. Now let's have some fun with pure, you want to talk about bleh. Each of these teams is at 6.5.
Oh, Lord. Okay.
You ready? I'm just going to go
wins.
Alphabetical. Arizona.
No, under.
You just got to go gut feel.
Under.
All right. Minnesota.
Under.
The Giants.
Under.
The Titans.
People kind of like under.
I'm going to take the over, by the way, on the Titans.
Okay.
Commanders.
Under.
There you go. So there's the bottom of the barrel. 4 for New England. 5 is the number for the Broncos and Carolina. And then I just gave you the handful of teams at 6.5. Remembering, by the way, that the Raiders were also one of the 6.5 teams. We just already talked about them, so I skipped right over that. And like we talked about, top of the heap, not surprising, is Kansas City and San Francisco, followed by Philly, Detroit, Cincinnati, Buffalo, and Baltimore. Those are all of the top tier teams where their over/under totals are all double.
Curiosity, just curious. Russell Wilson's Pittsburgh Steelers, where do they sit? Because that AFC North is nasty. Last year, every team had a winning record, and if Joe Burrow's back healthy, might happen again.
Pittsburgh's at 7.5, which I think is too low. I would play the over.
I'd play the over on that easily.
Absolutely.
They won 10 with Kenny Pickett, Mason Rudolph last year. You can manufacture it with Wilson and Fields. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think you can get it done with Wilson and Fields. And I also believe that it wouldn't surprise me if by week 7, it's Fields' team.
No, wouldn't surprise me either.
Instead of Russ's.
Yeah. I think Wilson could get traded this season as well.
I think Russ is going to enter the either I'm done portion of his career or the I'm going to go be somebody's backup portion.
Well, he gets $38 million for the Broncos to not play for them.
Yeah, he gets a lot of money to do jack squat.
That's not a bad gig if you can get it.
Yeah, exactly. Get paid to do nothing.
I think I'd take $38.
No, not 38. I would do 38K.
Well, I'd definitely do that.
I mean, I would do that. What is that, like 1%?
Yeah.
Is that right? Did I do the number? How many zeros
I
are
can't
there?
calculate that many zeros in my head.
I don't know.
That sounds right. But yeah, it's
something like that.
Good spot for Russell Wilson, obviously. But yeah, it's an interesting way to look at the year, and especially right now, because you said there's been some movement. Because right now, among fan bases, right, this is the time of year where optimism reigns supreme for everybody.
Yeah.
Like everybody thinks this is the year they'll turn it around. And that's always how it feels.
Like this is the time of year where everybody is just like the Cubs.
What are you taking a picture of for the people watching on the stream?
Jason Garrett's out there talking to the quarterbacks.
Talking to the quarterbacks.
He's talking to Bo and Zach and Stidham right now.
So that's making Broncos fans uneasy already. Right there. But
it's he's just hanging out there. Well, and that brings it full circle. We told you the fact that if Anilo were here, he would completely Tanya Harding. He would totally Nancy Kerrigan him. He wouldn't he? Danny, I'm not wrong, am I? He would go out there. He would take one of the tripods that's holding our cameras, and he would just go smash Garrett in the knees.
Thank goodness for that tripod, by the way. In case you missed it when Taylor Kilgore was on, we got hit by an Zach Wilson pass. Not really Wilson's fault. Got tipped, and then it came rolling into the fence. But that was kind of entertaining. We've been saying all training camp, we were waiting for a punt to fly in here, and then it turned out to be a pass. But eventually, it was bound to happen.
It was going to happen at some point. Yeah, I agree with you. All right. So tomorrow is joint practice. We will be back
at the end of training camp.
And the end of the quote unquote training camp side of things. Obviously, the preseason and the practices and all those kinds of things will continue, but it will be the end of our little 10 by 10 corner of the world.
Yep.
Will be coming to an end tomorrow. Looking forward to that. Looking forward to Matt Lafleur being out here with his Green Bay
French
Packers
for
squad.
the flower.
It is. Thank you.
Bet.
I
Captain Obvious.
I would have thought it was like Spanish for like sea moss.
Appreciate the Broncos, by the way, in this space. So we, not something we had a chance to do last year. Nice to be back out here.
Yeah, it was kind of BS last year that we weren't allowed out here. So I'm glad that they
nice to be back.
Changed things up and brought it out.
Yeah, really appreciate it, and
let us hang with them. It's like, hey,
yeah, you're talking
nice
about the
guys.
Broncos. Well, and on top of that, let's face it, we're talking about the Denver Broncos doing
nice.
kind of the sales work there. So
I mean, I can't speak for the people in the tents next to us, but I know we're nice people.
No, it's not our tent. That's not our business.
That's not true. Stokely's a good
Actually, everyone down here is nice.
I'm giving everybody
career, and good for the Broncos, by the way, for getting everyone back here. It's nice. And then
anybody that wants to try to pretend that there is some sort of cutthroat attitude to sports media in Denver is an idiot.
No, and that would that extends all the way.
Even when I made fun of them for being across the street, I did so.
That extends, by the way, all the way up to Boulder. We'll keep an eye on that as the Buffs are from 2 weeks from tonight will make their 24 debut against North Dakota State in what equates to a must-win
against
game
the Bison.
Buffalo versus the Buffaloes and the Bison.
The Buffaloes versus the Bison.
So everyone look up the difference, because there's a very small difference.
So there's that.
Yeah, so we'll be back at it tomorrow right here. The fans are hoping for a couple autographs. Big crowd today. Obviously, expect a really big one tomorrow with the joint practice with the Packers. Appreciate Chris Thomasson for joining us, of course, from the Denver Gazette. Taylor Kilgore from Fox 31. Nate Lundy, of course. Cody Roark at the beginning of the program with his primers. Check out everything he's putting together, too. Danny Bailey's the man over my right shoulder. You might have seen him when our camera got bonked by Zach Wilson. It's errant pass, and then he had to come fix it. But Danny's the guy that makes all of this work. None of it happens without him, and none of it happens without you. For everybody here at Mile High Sports Team Coverage, we'll be back at it tomorrow. I'm Sean Drotzar. That'll do it for us today. We'll catch you tomorrow, same time, 11 for the Broncos and Packers right here on Mile High Sports.
Bye-bye.